The most recent Level 2 CFA exam results are now posted. While the pass rate wasn't as low as it was for the recent Level 1 CFA exam, it is the lowest pass rate we've seen since 2010 for Level 2, and one of the lowest pass rates on record for that test. For many of us, myself included, and maybe even more so some recent Level 2 candidates, we've been wondering if the Level 2 results would look something like the Level 1 results with extremely low pass rates, and these results definitely lean in that direction. This video is going to be another look into why the pass rates may have been so low. In some ways, will be a follow-up to my recent Level 1 pass rate video, which you can catch here. We will address some of the theories posed in that video with more recent information, and look at whether some of the same issues that may have applied for those Level 1 candidates were also relevant for these Level 2 candidates. So let me start off by saying, if you're someone who passed the May 2021 Level 2 exam, congratulations. It could be one of the biggest accomplishments you'll have in your life, so it's worth celebrating. If you're a candidate who did not pass your recent Level 2 exam, I totally feel for you, and especially if you're someone who is very close and in any Level 2 exam in prior years with the historically lower minimum passing scores and historically higher pass rates you could have potentially passed. That would be an extremely difficult situation to have to deal with, I'm sure. But all is not lost. With the new computer-based testing system, you'll be able to take your next Level 2 exam if you choose to, much more quickly than you would have ever been able to in the past also. So there are a few main theories we discussed on why the Level 1 and now Level 2 pass rates are so low for these May 2021 examinations. Some information that was made known, to me at least more recently, disproves one of those theories, and we also will talk a little bit more about Mark Meldrum's theory that we can't actually prove or disprove yet, just because that one will depend on how the recent Level 1 passers perform on their next Level 2 exam, but we can still get into it. Let's start off with the theory that became really popular in the last couple weeks about why the Level 1 pass rate was only 25%, which was that people in India and China weren't allowed to sit for the May 2020 exams, and also people in India and China study much more and perform much better in terms of the pass rates than people in other parts of the globe, so the fact that those people didn't test means that the average came down that far. This theory was made popular in a couple places. I saw it all over in Reddit on the recent Level 1 results thread, but also in a relatively popular YouTube video from another CFA related channel, which said that this was pretty clearly the reason why the pass rate was so low recently. After seeing all the comments on Reddit and watching that video, I was personally pretty convinced, and it just made sense to me conceptually, but I was surprised, wow, so people in the rest of the world only have traditionally a 25% pass rate for Level 1. People in China and India must have about a 65% pass rate, assuming it's like a 50-50 mix of candidates, so the overall Level 1 pass rate's usually around 45. I just took it for truth, but was pretty disappointed with the rest of the world and really proud of India and China for studying so much harder than everyone else. However, there's some good data in the Level 1 results survey that's conducted on the RCFA subreddit page that asks people about their pass rates and what country they're from. I discussed this in the most recent video on the channel, but the results on that survey totally debunk this idea that people in the western part of the globe pass at much lower rates than people in India and China. It asked over 2,000 candidates whether they passed or failed and what countries they were from. And actually for a couple of the Level 1 exams, I think it was like December of 2019 and beginning of 2020. Don't quote me on those timelines, you can check the survey for yourself. But the point is that there were a couple of time periods for the Level 1 exam where people in the Americas passed at a higher rate than people in India and China, about 5% higher rate. So it just wouldn't make sense at all that for some reason the May 2021 exam, people in the Americas had a far lower pass rate and people in India and China would have had a 75% pass rate based on past data. But like I said, that information was already out on the Reddit page. I just wasn't aware of it at the time when I started to buy into this idea that it was India and China failing to take the exam because of COVID restrictions that the pass rates became so low. That's not the case. To address Mark Meldrum's theory, and if you haven't watched my Level 1 results video yet, he basically says that, and he's hypothesizing here, he doesn't say that there's any information to base this, but his feeling is that maybe the Institute made the Level 1 exam much more difficult, making the pass rate much lower, so that less candidates have to waste their time passing Level 1, but then never getting past Levels 2 or 3 because those are much more difficult. He compares it to what some universities do when they pick a certain 101 level course, but make it unnecessarily difficult to kind of prune out the weeds, deter the kids who aren't going to study all that much from pursuing certain coursework in the future, because there's not enough professors or classes or seats for every kid in a certain major in college. So maybe the Institute did a similar thing where they just said, yeah, if we make the Level 1 exam twice as hard, we're just gonna prevent the people from passing the Level 1 exam who may otherwise have passed the Level 1 exam but will never go on to pass Levels 2 or 3. And to my point at the beginning of this video, we won't know if Mark Meldrum's theory is right until we see the November 2021 Level 2 results. those candidates would have been composed of people who recently passed the May 2021 level 1 exam. If we see the November level 2 exam pass rate go up to like 60 or 70%, then maybe Mark's theory was right, and they only let the most hardworking candidates through level 1, so that almost everyone that's now sitting for level 2 is far more qualified to take that test. My theory, I didn't agree with what Mark was saying there. I just felt like maybe the Institute was making all of the exams more difficult in order to make the total amount of people getting the charter a lower number. This would all potentially be in some effort to make the CFA charter more exclusive and more desirable, and you could potentially do that by making it harder to get. And I think based on these recent level 2 results that we've now seen, my theory is still on the table. The level 1 pass rate was really low, 25%. The minimum passing score was around 73%. Now we know the level 2 pass rate was historically very low at 40%. The minimum passing score was somewhere around 65%, which is one of the highest it's been for level 2. We'll see the level 3 results next week. I'll probably make another video about that. Don't forget to check that one out, but you gotta be subscribed to the channel to see it then. But the point is, my theory is probably still intact based on this new information. We can also talk about what the CFA Institute themselves said the reason for the very low level 1 pass rate was, which was that candidates across the board on average were less prepared than they have been in the past. The specific argument they made was that since they had to reschedule many of the candidates who sat for the May 2021 level 1 exam from November 2020 or even periods before that, those candidates, because of all this, had their study schedules chopped up into different increments, and the Institute said maybe that's why they passed at a lower rate. In my level 1 video on this, I argued for a couple different reasons that that logic does not make sense to me conceptually, because I always feel like the more time someone has to study for any of the CFA exams, the better they're going to perform on average. But I could still be wrong here. With the recent results we saw for level 2, those candidates also would have fallen into the category of a choppy study schedule, so the fact that that pass rate was much lower means that the CFA Institute's rationale on why that level 1 pass rate was so low could still be accurate. The candidates could have just been less prepared because of all the rescheduling that they had to do. And since making that level 1 video, I've heard from a handful of you who said, yeah, I was really well prepared for the level 1 exam, and then like 3 days before I was going to sit for it, the Institute canceled it on me and I had to take it 6 months later. And that sort of was eye-opening for me, because if I was in that situation, I would be so discouraged, especially in the way that I approached the exams and the preparation that I did and what I did in the last 3 days before the test to get myself ready. If I was at the point where I liked to have been 3 days out from any of my CFA exams and then it got rescheduled, that honestly probably would have felt like pretty life-altering to me, and I would not have been motivated to get back on the horse and start studying again anytime soon. So there could have potentially been many of you who were in that situation. It's also worth mentioning that these people who recently sat for the level 2 exam may have passed their level 1 exam like 2.5 or 3 years ago. And that can make a pretty big difference, because despite what people say about the level 1 exam being 10 miles wide and a foot deep, but the level 2 exam being a mile wide but 10 miles deep, or whatever they say about the level 2 exam being more in-depth but far more difficult, I just don't buy in to most of that rhetoric. In my opinion, the level 2 exam is pretty similar to the level 1 exam. You have to approach the way you learn slightly differently, but not all that differently, and in aggregate, it's probably 30 or 40% harder to pass that test, not 200 times harder. And if I'm right about those claims, then that would mean that a lot of the information you learn in level 1 that gets tested in level 2, like ethics and econ and a lot of fixed income, there's some overlap for, then the better you did, and for this conversation, more importantly, the more recently you took the level 1 exam, the more helpful your level 1 experience is going to be on level 2. So with that being said, level 2 is the hardest exam in my opinion, and you have a lot of these candidates who, instead of having had taken the level 1 exam 6 or 12 months prior to their level 2 exam, they took it like 24 or 30 months prior. That was a relative disadvantage, I think. The last follow-up point from that prior discussion that I want to make here is about what the overall pass rate from becoming a level 1 candidate to becoming a CFA charter holder might become if we continue to see pass rates that are this much lower than they have been in the past. It'll depend on what we see for the level 3 test results, but if they stayed somewhere around 25% for level 1, 40% for level 2, and then we can assume level 3 will be slightly higher, maybe 45 to 50%, that would still make the overall pass rate, at least on the first attempt for each candidate, of becoming a charter holder between 4 and 5%, much lower than the 12 to 15% I've estimated it currently is. Then when you account for people who retake the exams, the overall pass rate looks something more like 6, 7, 8%. So that would make the CFA program still one of the most difficult, and for that reason, potentially prestigious programs on the planet. I don't know if we'll see the numbers remain this low into the future. If my theory's right, we probably will see them at least remain lower than they have been historically. Maybe not 25% low, but it could be close. And all those things mean that it would statistically become far more difficult to become a CFA charter holder. Now, when I mentioned that potential reality last time, I got some really cool comments from people who said that future scenario would make them even more motivated and even more driven to get this thing done, and I really admire that. So if you're hearing me say this and you think my theory could be right and that the overall pass rate to become a charter holder will be lower in the future, try to use that and channel any emotions that you have around that potential to become more driven and want it more and recognize how much more difficult it's going to be and see the opportunity to beat even more people who potentially won't become CFA charter holders in the future. I think the people who are most successful with this, if it is more difficult moving forward, will be those people that are really up for a challenge like this. And you just have to find a way to be one of those people, or at least think like them, if you want to be accomplishing this thing moving forward. If you enjoyed this conversation or any of the similar conversations recently on the channel, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Both of those things help me out very much and I appreciate them. As always, thanks for watching.